My boss stood up at the head of the 28th floor boardroom of Halston Meridian Group on the morning of Tuesday, September 16th, and he did something no chief operating officer at a Fortune 500 company had done in 31 years of company history. He fired me in front of the board of directors. He fired me at 9:47 in the morning, in the middle of a quarterly strategy presentation I had been preparing for 11 weeks. He fired me while I was standing at the presentation lectern, in a navy blue suit I had bought for the meeting, with a laser pointer in my right hand, 3 slides into a deck he had approved on the previous Friday. He said, "Rachel, I think we've heard enough." He said it into his own microphone, so that all 14 board members heard him. He said, "Effective immediately, Rachel Zhao is being separated from the company. Board, please forgive the interruption. HR will handle the transition. Rachel, please leave your badge with Marilyn on the way out. Sarah from Strategic Communications will finish this presentation." The boardroom was silent for exactly 4 seconds. Then a woman at the far end of the table, a woman I had never spoken to, in a charcoal suit, with silver hair, set down her coffee cup. And she said, "Rachel, before you leave, please stay. The company? My name is Rachel Zhao. I am 41 years old. For the last 11 years, I have worked at Halston Meridian Group, a Fortune 500 healthcare and life sciences holding company, headquartered in downtown Chicago. Until 9:47 a.m. on the morning of September 16th, my title was Senior Vice President for Corporate Strategy. I had a team of 17 people. I reported directly to the Chief Operating Officer, a man named Bradley Marsh. Bradley Marsh is the reason for this story, so I need to tell you about him. Bradley is 58 years old. He grew up in Winnetka, Illinois. He went to Northwestern for undergrad and Kellogg for his MBA. He joined Halston Meridian in 1998, 27 years ago, as a junior associate on the corporate development team. He rose through the company, through mergers and acquisitions, through corporate strategy, through the healthcare services division, and in 2019, 6 years ago, he was promoted to Chief Operating Officer. He has spent the last 6 years as, by all internal and external measures, the second most powerful person at Halston Meridian. The most powerful person at Halston Meridian, for the last 22 years, was a man named William Halston. William Halston founded the company in 1987. He built it from a small hospital services firm into a multinational holding company with revenue north of $9 billion a year. He was, and is, one of the most respected healthcare executives of his generation. William Halston announced his retirement in April of this year. That is when the trouble began. I want to explain the trouble carefully, because it is the entire premise of what happened in that boardroom on September 16th. William Halston had, for the last 2 years, been quietly grooming a successor. His board of directors had, in accordance with governance best practices, engaged an executive search firm, Russell Reynolds, one of the top firms in the world, to conduct a formal succession search that would evaluate both internal and external candidates. The internal candidates were, in descending order of seniority, Bradley Marsh, our COO, Kenneth Dobbs, our Chief Financial Officer, and a woman named Diana Cho, our Chief Medical Officer. The external search remained confidential. Bradley Marsh, however, believed he had it in the bag. I want you to understand why he believed this. Bradley had, for the previous 3 years, positioned himself as William Halston's natural heir. He had cultivated relationships with the board. He had taken the lead on the company's largest acquisition, the $2.1 billion purchase of a specialty pharmacy network in 2023. He had, at the annual Investor Day in June, delivered the keynote address in Williams' place, at Williams' request. Bradley believed, correctly, that if the board selected an internal candidate, he was the internal candidate. Bradley did not believe, and this is where it starts to matter, that the board would select anyone else. I want to tell you why I was on Bradley Marsh's radar, because it is why he did what he did. For 3 years, from 2022 to 2025, I had been the corporate strategy lead on a project we called internally the Meridian Optimization Initiative, a comprehensive strategic review of the company's operating model, its capital allocation, and its organizational structure. My team's work had, over 3 years, generated approximately $340 million in identified cost savings, $180 million of which had been implemented. Our recommendations had, in 3 separate cases, resulted in significant restructuring of divisions that Bradley personally oversaw. Bradley did not appreciate that. He did not appreciate it because my work made his divisions look, and I am being generous here, inefficient. My work made his direct reports look overpaid. My work made his 6-year tenure as COO look, by comparison to what my team was identifying, expensive. Bradley began, in the summer of 2024, to describe my work at senior leadership meetings as aggressive, unrealistic, and, in one email I later obtained through discovery, a distraction from real operational leadership. Bradley began, in the fall of 2024, to exclude me from meetings I had previously attended. Bradley began, in January of 2025, to sit down at every internal briefing session and, in the presence of my direct reports, correct small factual claims in my presentations in ways that seemed pedantic but that were, over time, meant to establish that I could not be trusted with the details. I noticed all of it. I did not at any point escalate. I did not escalate for 2 reasons. The first reason is that I had spent 11 years at Halston Meridian, and I understood the culture. Halston Meridian did not reward people who escalated. Halston Meridian rewarded people who outproduced. The second reason is that I had, in April of last year, the same month William Halston announced his retirement, met with William Halston in his office at his request. He had asked me about the Meridian Optimization Initiative. He had asked me to describe, in detail, the resistance I had encountered from Bradley Marsh's team. He had listened. He had not commented. He had said, at the end of the meeting, "Rachel, keep doing the work. The company needs it. And do not, under any circumstances, tell Bradley I asked." I did not tell Bradley. For the next 5 months, from April to September, I kept doing the work. I prepared, over 11 weeks, a strategic presentation for the September board meeting that would, I believed, formalize the 3rd phase of the Meridian Optimization Initiative and clear the way for approximately $95 million in additional annual savings. Bradley approved the presentation on Friday, September 12th. 4 days later, at 9:47 a.m. on Tuesday, September 16th, 3 slides into the presentation, Bradley Marsh stood up at his seat at the boardroom table and fired me in front of the board of directors. I did not at that moment understand what had happened. I understood only that Bradley Marsh had, at some point over the weekend of September 13th-14th, decided to end my career at Halston Meridian in the most public and irreversible way he could. Presumably because he had, over the weekend, discovered something about the board's direction that made him believe I was suddenly, urgently, dangerous to him. I did not know, standing at that lectern with a laser pointer in my hand, what Bradley had discovered. But I was about to find out. The boardroom. I want to describe what happened in the boardroom in the 7 minutes between when Bradley fired me and when the silver-haired woman at the far end of the table asked me to stay. Bradley said, "Rachel, I think we've heard enough." I set down my laser pointer. I did not look at Bradley. I looked at William Halston. William was seated at the middle of the long side of the table, in the seat traditionally occupied by the retiring CEO during a transition period. He was 71 years old. He had white hair. He wore a charcoal suit. He had been my mentor, in a formal sense, for 3 years. William did not meet my eyes. He looked at his notepad. I understood, in that moment, that whatever Bradley had done, William was not going to stop him. I did not, at the time, understand why. Bradley continued. Effective immediately, Rachel Zhao is being separated from the company. Board, please forgive the interruption. HR will handle the transition. Rachel, please leave your badge with Marilyn on the way out. Sarah from Strategic Communications will finish this presentation. Sarah, a woman I had trained for 3 years, who worked for me, who was sitting 3 chairs behind me, did not move. The boardroom was silent. I began, slowly, to gather my papers from the lectern. I closed my laptop. I picked up my laser pointer. I placed everything in my leather portfolio. I was calm. I want to be honest. I was calm because I was in shock. The calm was not composure. The calm was the specific stillness of a person who has been struck by something so unexpected that the emotional response has not yet caught up to the physical one. I began to walk toward the door. I made it approximately 3 steps. The silver-haired woman at the far end of the table, a woman I had never seen at a Halston Meridian board meeting before, set down her coffee cup. She said, "Rachel, before you leave, please stay." I stopped. Bradley Marsh, still standing at his seat, said, "Ms. Whitmore, with respect, this is a personnel matter that's been decided." The silver-haired woman said, "Bradley, sit down." Bradley did not sit down immediately. She said quietly, "Bradley, I said sit down. Bradley sat down. The woman turned to me. She said, Rachel. My name is Margaret Whitmore. I want to apologize for the way this meeting has just been conducted. Would you please return to the lectern? I would like to introduce myself to the board, and I would like you to remain in the room while I do so. I walked back to the lectern. I did not speak. Margaret Whitmore stood up. She said, Good morning. For those of you on this board who I have not yet had the pleasure of meeting in person, my name is Margaret Whitmore. I am 63 years old. Until Friday of last week, I was the Chief Executive Officer of Prescott Health Partners in Boston, a specialty pharmacy and healthcare services company with revenue of approximately $4 billion a year. As of 8 o'clock this morning, Tuesday, September 16th, I have accepted the position of Chief Executive Officer of Halston Meridian Group, effective immediately, pursuant to the succession decision made by this board over the past weekend. The boardroom went completely still. I saw Bradley Marsh's face change. He was not, at that moment, angry. He was pale. His mouth was slightly open, because Bradley Marsh had, until 45 seconds earlier, believed the succession decision had gone in his favor. He had believed it because his own contacts on the board had, over the weekend, told him it had. He had believed it because the executive search firm had, on Friday afternoon, called him to inform him he was the finalist. Bradley did not know that the board had, over the same weekend, quietly reversed course. The board had reversed course because, and this is the part I would not learn for another 6 hours, William Halston had, on Sunday morning, met privately with the board's succession committee and had told them, at length, that he did not believe Bradley Marsh should be his successor. He had cited 3 specific reasons. He had cited Bradley's exclusion of senior colleagues from key meetings, he had cited Bradley's pattern of publicly diminishing his direct reports, and he had cited a specific case that William did not name in his conversation with the board, but that I would learn later he had prepared a full internal memo about, of Bradley's treatment of the corporate strategy team over the previous 18 months. The board had, on Sunday afternoon, called Margaret Whitmore. Margaret Whitmore had accepted the position on Monday morning. The board's confirmation vote had been conducted, formally, on a call at 7:15 a.m. on Tuesday, 32 minutes before the boardroom meeting started. Bradley Marsh had, during that 32 minutes, not been informed. He had been allowed to walk into the boardroom expecting to be crowned. Instead, he had walked into the boardroom, watched me begin a presentation, and, presumably realizing that if I finished the presentation and Margaret Whitmore heard the strength of the Meridian Optimization Initiative work, he would be exposed as the reason it had been slowed for 2 years. He had made the decision, in the moment, to fire me, to remove me, to close the door before Margaret could open it. He had believed the meeting was still his. Margaret Whitmore said, still standing, Before I begin my remarks to the board, I want to do one thing. I want to introduce myself, formally, to a senior member of this company's leadership, whom I have not yet had the pleasure of meeting in person, but whose work I have followed for the past 3 years. She turned to me. She said, Rachel Zhao, it is my honor to meet you. William Halston has spoken very highly of you, as has our mutual friend, Dr. Vivian Park of the Northwestern Medical School, who was, I believe, on the advisory board for Phase 1 of your Meridian optimization work. I have read every quarterly report your team has produced since 2022. I would like to hear the rest of your presentation. Please continue. I could not for a moment speak. Then I said, Ms. Whitmore, thank you. I would be happy to. Margaret Whitmore sat down. Bradley Marsh, who had, 10 minutes earlier, fired me, did not sit down. He remained standing. He looked at William Halston. William Halston did not look back at him. Bradley said, William, this is not. William Halston, for the first time in 7 minutes, spoke. He said, Bradley, please sit down. Rachel is going to finish her presentation, and then Ms. Whitmore is going to speak. And then, I believe, you and I are going to have a private conversation. Bradley sat down. I turned back to the lectern. I opened my laptop, and I finished my presentation. The presentation and after. I want to describe the next 47 minutes with some care, because they are the most professionally satisfying 47 minutes of my adult life. I finished the presentation. I did not, in finishing it, alter a single slide from the deck Bradley had approved on Friday. I did not add material. I did not editorialize. I delivered the presentation exactly as it had been prepared. I explained the analysis. I walked through the projections. I identified the $95 million in additional annual operating savings, and I identified, because it was on slide 23, which Bradley had approved without reading carefully, the specific divisional inefficiencies that had produced those savings. 6 of the 7 divisions I identified as sources of inefficiency reported to Bradley Marsh. Margaret Whitmore asked me 11 questions during the presentation. Every question was substantive. Every question came from a person who had, in fact, read every quarterly report my team had produced since 2022. 2 of her questions were about specific footnotes in the appendix. Footnotes I had prepared personally and had assumed nobody on the board would ever read. She had read them. At the end of the presentation, Margaret said, "Rachel, thank you. This is exactly the level of strategic rigor Halston Meridian is going to require in its next chapter. I would like you to remain in your role for the moment. We will discuss your portfolio and your compensation this afternoon." I said, "Ms. Whitmore, thank you." She turned to the board. She said, "Board members, I appreciate your patience this morning. I understand that the transition has been abrupt. I want to briefly outline the direction I intend to take this company over the next 90 days, and then I would like to conclude this meeting and reconvene with the senior leadership team downstairs." She spoke for 40 minutes. I want to be honest that I do not remember every word of what she said. What I remember is this: she was calm. She was specific. She had, in the 4 days since accepting the position, which I would later learn she had been formally offered on Friday afternoon, before the board vote was even conducted, read every earnings call transcript from the previous 5 years, every internal strategy document produced by my team since 2022, and every quarterly report from every division of the company. She had done her homework. She had done her homework before she walked into the room. She had done her homework in a way that Bradley Marsh, who had spent 6 years believing the job would be given to him, had not. Halfway through her remarks, Margaret Whitmore paused. She looked at Bradley. She said, "Bradley, I want to address something directly. What happened at the beginning of this meeting was not acceptable. I want to be clear with the board, and with the executive team, that the manner in which Rachel Zhao was addressed this morning is not the manner in which senior executives will be treated at Halston Meridian under my leadership. I am asking the board's succession committee to convene this afternoon to consider the appropriate next steps regarding the chief operating officer position." The boardroom was silent. Bradley Marsh, sitting at his seat, said nothing. Margaret said, "Bradley, do you have anything you would like to say?" Bradley said, "Ms. Whitmore, I would like to speak with William before I respond." William Halston said, "Bradley, that conversation is going to happen, but it is not going to happen in this room." The meeting concluded at 11:47 a.m. I walked out of the boardroom with my leather portfolio, my laptop, and my badge, which I did not, in fact, turn into Marilyn on my way out. I want to describe the elevator ride down from the 28th floor, because I think it is the moment I want to remember from that day. I got into the elevator alone. I pressed the button for the 41st floor, which was my floor, the corporate strategy floor. Just before the doors closed, William Halston stepped in. He said, "Rachel, going up or down?" I said, "Up, William." He pressed the button for the 41st floor. The doors closed. He said, "Rachel, I owe you an apology." I said, "William, you don't owe me anything." He said, "Rachel, I do. I owe you an apology for not warning you. I could not warn you. The confidentiality of the succession process would not allow it. But I want you to know that I made the decision, on Sunday, that no matter which way the board voted, I was going to protect your work from Bradley. If the board had chosen Bradley, I was going to resign publicly the following morning and take the story of the Meridian Optimization Initiative to the Wall Street Journal on my way out. The board knew this. I did not tell you because I could not. I am telling you now because I want you to know." I said, "William, thank you." He said, "Rachel, Margaret is going to be a good CEO. I have known her for 22 years. She is one of the finest healthcare executives of her generation. She is going to want your help. Please give it to her." I said, "William, I will." The elevator arrived at the 41st floor. He said, "One more thing, Rachel." I said, "Yes?" He said, "You handled yourself in that room this morning the way I would have expected my own daughter to handle herself. I mean that. I mean it in the highest possible sense. Have a good afternoon." He stepped out of the elevator. He walked down the hallway toward his office. I walked to my office. My assistant, a woman named Priya Sharma, was standing outside the door with a cup of coffee for me. She had, apparently, heard about the boardroom incident through a chain of internal messages that had, in the 90 minutes since the meeting ended, traveled through most of the 28th floor. She was pale. She said, "Rachel, are you?" I said, "Priya? I'm fine. Thank you for the coffee. Please clear my calendar for the afternoon. Ms. Whitmore is going to want to meet with me at some point today. Please tell her assistant I am available whenever she is ready." Priya said, "Rachel, are you really?" I said, "Priya, I am really fine. Come inside, sit down. I want to tell you something." I closed my office door. I told Priya what had happened. Priya cried a little. I let her. Then I picked up the phone and I called my husband. The aftermath: Bradley Marsh was, formally, removed from his position as Chief Operating Officer at Halston Meridian Group on Friday, September 19th, 3 days after the board meeting. The company's press release described the change as a mutually agreed transition to pursue other opportunities. The stock market did not react. Wall Street did not react. Bradley did not, and has not, returned any of the internal calls he was given the courtesy of receiving before the announcement. His severance package was, I am told, substantial. His non-compete agreement, I am told, was aggressive. He has not, in the 6 months since the meeting, taken another executive position. He has, I am told, been considering advisory work and board seats. I have not spoken to Bradley since the elevator ride down from the boardroom. I do not intend to. Margaret Whitmore appointed a new chief operating officer in November. It was not me. I did not expect it to be me. I am 41 years old. I was not yet ready for a COO role at a Fortune 500 company, and Margaret was too careful an executive to promote for political reasons. Instead, in November, Margaret asked me to take a new role, one she had, in consultation with the board, created specifically. My title, as of the first of the year, is Executive Vice President for Enterprise Strategy and Transformation. I report directly to Margaret. My compensation was doubled. My team was tripled. I have a small conference room on the 28th floor, one door down from Margaret's office, that I use for my weekly strategy reviews. The Meridian Optimization Initiative, the work Bradley had, for 2 years, actively obstructed, is now the operational backbone of Margaret Whitmore's 90-day plan for the company. Phase 3, the $95 million in additional annual savings that I presented at the September board meeting, was implemented by the end of the first quarter. Phase 4 is in development. I want to tell you 2 things about the 6 months since the September meeting. The first thing is about William Halston. William retired formally in December, on his original planned schedule. Before he left the company, he sent me a note. It was 1 page. It was handwritten. It said, in the middle paragraph, "Rachel, I have watched in 41 years in this industry, exactly 3 young executives handle themselves with the composure you demonstrated on September 16th. 2 of them are now Fortune 500 CEOs. I hope you will remember that composure is a habit, and that the world will give you many opportunities to practice it. Please stay in touch. W." I keep the note in the top drawer of my desk. The second thing is about my mother. My mother is 74 years old. She lives in the same house in the western suburbs of Chicago where I grew up. She was a bookkeeper for a small manufacturing company for 38 years. She retired in 2014. My father, who died in 2017, was a mechanical engineer. My mother has never, in 41 years, fully understood what I do for a living. She knows I work at Halston Meridian. She knows I have a big job. She knows I make good money. When people at her church ask her what her daughter does, she says, and I am quoting her directly, "Oh, she does something with strategy. I don't really understand it." I called my mother on the evening of September 16th. I told her what had happened. I did not at first tell her that I had been fired and then rehired within 11 minutes. I told her instead that a new CEO had been named at my company and that things at work were going to be different going forward, and that I was going to be all right. My mother said, "Rachel, do you have a new job?" I said, "Mom, I have my old job, but it's a new company now." She said, "That sounds like a good thing." I said, "Mom, it is." She said, "Rachel, I want to tell you something. You are like your grandmother." My mother. You know, she came to this country in 1962 with $200 and a suitcase. She used to say, "Grace?" My mother called me Grace. She never called me by my Chinese name. "Grace, in this country, you will be underestimated every day of your life. Do not correct them. Just do the work. And one day, someone important will notice, and the underestimation will end all at once. She paused. She said, Rachel, did someone important notice? I said, Mom, yes, someone important noticed. She said, Good, Rachel. I am proud of you. Come for Sunday dinner this weekend. I am making dumplings. I said, Mom, I will. I went for Sunday dinner. She made dumplings. She asked me, for the first time in my life, what my company actually did. I told her. She listened for 45 minutes. She asked good questions. She said, at the end, Rachel, I understand now. I am going to tell the ladies at church. I am going to tell them exactly what my daughter does. And I am going to tell them that a woman named Margaret Whitmore said your name first, in a room full of important people. I said, Mom, yes, she did. She said, Good, Rachel, good. We ate dumplings. If you have ever done the work quietly for years, and been passed over quietly for years, and told yourself quietly for years that the work would eventually be enough, I want you to leave one word in the comments below. Just one word. The name of the person at your company who saw you, before anyone else did. It can be a mentor, a boss, an assistant, a client, a stranger who wrote you a note. Say their name, because someone in this comment section is going to see your word, and they are going to remember that they have been that person for someone once, and that they can be that person again this week. And if this story reminded you that the work always finds its witness eventually, subscribe. Because next week, I am telling you about a woman who threw coffee on my uniform at the airport. TSA escorted her off the plane. I'll see you there.